Hello and welcome to the final ever Gooners podcast.
Kind of feels like it should be, doesn't it?
Are we just going to do what every other Arsenal supporter from various parts of the world, they're just going to jump ship and support another team because they can't handle this anymore?
I've seen a ridiculous amount of that on Facebook in the various groups. It's like, I'm finally done. I'm going to Man City. Fuck off and go there. Welcome to the 38th episode of our third season here on the Gooners Pod. Our working title today is called Champions League is for Nerds. So, and Arsenal ain't no nerd, man. So fuck that, clearly. But we do have a duck breaker on with us today, John Welsh from a Bergkamp Wonderland. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
It's only taken 130 episodes for us to have you on.
It is something like that. I think I've managed to dodge like the past 3-4 weeks in a row. Something.
It makes it seem like I've been asking you on every week, like we're desperate or something like that. But feel free, because that's actually pretty much what's happened.
Yeah.
You paid my appearance fee yesterday. It's fine.
Exactly, we did. We donated $1.99 to Bergkamp Wonderland and got that taken care of which they get to keep, I think, 20%. Second straight.
Danny takes 80%. Is that why?
Yeah. Well, who does?
Danny.
Oh yeah, no. Danny gets the 15% that YouTube doesn't keep. Second straight Bergkamp Wonderland guest. If you remember, Andy, last week we had Jason Davies on. If we have one more podcaster from ABW on, we get the fourth one for free.
Ooh.
But you finally made it internationally, John. You're on in America and in Mozambique and everywhere else. Finally, I had to tell Andy, we can't keep banning people other than Jason and this guy from coming on anymore. You got to give that up. I want to talk to some other people. And he said no, so I just told him that you were Danny and that you'd be in the bath.
You know, I've sort of got the beard. I could work on the weight. That's not a problem. I'm happy to try.
And you have the backlighting of Jason, so it's kind of like we're having the best of both worlds, except you're not in the bath. But so tell me, how did you end up with those guys? It's been what, 3-4 years? How did they discover the talent that is John Welsh?
Yeah, talent's one word for it, I guess. How did they? I think I just started, like most people, just like found the podcast and was listening to it and started chatting to the guys on Twitter. And I think it was Chris actually reached out to me and asked if I'd come on to one of the transfer deadline day specials. I've been talking a lot about Italian football. It's like Serie A is kind of like my little pet favorite thing. We got chatting about our favorite players from the 90s, that kind of thing, shared interests. Invited me on, did my little 10-minute spiel or whatever with some other listeners, as they do most seasons. And yeah, they just asked me to come back again. Started to become a bit more regular on the podcast, and then see Chris had the idea and started the radio show that we do after every game, and it just went from there. Chris then disappeared, ran away, and just went, Jason, run with it.
He went to grow his hair.
Yeah.
Buy bed sheets. Yeah, this was when the podcast was just in rapid accumulation of hipster mode, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think they picked up me. Josh came along as well. Ellis, I guess, is hipster. He's technically not, but because he lives in Norwich and they've got web feet and stuff, it's kind of the same thing. It's close enough.
Drew's in the chat right now.
Yeah, we had Drew as well.
Making his triumphant return with you yesterday.
Yes, it was very nice to have Drew on. Someone talking sense and actually knew something about football, whereas normally me and Jason just talking complete bollocks.
No, I'm talking about Drew Thompson.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You're talking about a different Drew, I guess. So I just assumed you joined the pod because Danny ran you over and then offered you a spot on the award-winning podcast so you wouldn't sue him. But speaking of which, Danny is joining us today in a way. And because we also had an ABW on last week, this thing has been up there for a week, and I forgot about it. My son and his friends came down to play FIFA in our basement, which is where I podcast from, and we're now paying for their counseling. They're very, very traumatized. One last question before we get into a couple things. Why the Seattle Supersonics and New Orleans Saints? I always wonder about that.
Okay, so I haven't watched basketball for like years, like a very, very long time. My cousin was a big basketball fan when we were growing up, and I think it was probably playing NBA Jam or something like that on the Super Nintendo. And I just liked the Sonics. I was like, oh, that's a cool name. And yeah, I like the I can't remember I think it was Gary Payton maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Then they drafted one of the best players of the last 20 years, and the next season moved out of Seattle, absolutely crushing their fans.
And I think like over here we had like Basketball One on like one of the terrestrial channels. You didn't need Sky or anything for a few years when I was growing up, and then it went off a bit like American football did the same. And yeah, I just sort of lost track of it. If I watched basketball now, I wouldn't have an idea on any of the players, like the teams, half of them I've never heard of. And the same thing, I think the New Orleans Saints I'm a very big Pantera fan, if any of your listeners know who Pantera is. And yeah, Phil Anselmo is from New Orleans. He always talked about the Saints. I started watching American football. I was like, well, if they're good enough for Phil Anselmo, they're good enough for me.
Nice.
That was it.
Nice. And we have a couple other Saints fans that hang around us and follow us. So we'll mention that a little bit later because one of them has a user question. Just a reminder that we can be seen just about every week on YouTube, except for when we just don't feel like it. Either live or on demand. Subscribe to our channel. Click the bell, not this one, but the one on YouTube. And you can be notified whenever we go live with incredible new content, and also when we go live with shit content. If you don't want to torture yourselves with our faces, you can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Acast, Friendster, SiriusXM, TalkSport, and the BBC. We're also on Pornhub. If you didn't know that, John. John, have you ever? I'm not fucking with you either. Have you ever wanted to be a porn star? Because we could throw this puppy up here and see how many
on Pornhub.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody. You know, we have to get the consent of our guests. I mean,
please put me. I mean, that would make my year.
We could throw this puppy up and see how many people search for bearded British and ass play, and your thing will come up as most relevant. Andy, do you know that? I know that you know of 2 of our videos on YouTube, but do you know that we now have a 3rd?
I didn't. Which one did you post?
It's a very exciting footage of me brushing my teeth from last week.
Yeah, you did send me that, and I opened it and then immediately gagged and turned it off.
It is that's the reaction I was going for. It is full toothbrush penetration. I'm actually so into dental hygiene. Most people don't know this. I actually took 2 brushes at once. It was incredible. So yeah, there's that.
What's our listener count up to now?
Listener, 0. Up to. What are you talking about? Up to.
Are we still the largest football podcast on Pornhub?
I would probably say so. We're large and throbbing. So, all right. So, speaking of our chat room, which I hadn't mentioned yet, but now I am, we got some people joining us. First of all, Grant Wilborn, thanks for joining us. Grant was in the chat for your pod yesterday, John, and took Danny's kind advice to subscribe to our channel. So it's nice to have new people along. Thanks, Grant. Drew's in here, of course. Mike Hernandez, thanks for joining us. Sebi's in here, the master of what's it called? Of things. Ryan Koss is in here. Mecca Fred Zilla, who I believe is our Saints fan. Fredo from New Orleans, who's now leaving, and Pat Brady. Thank you. Most people are commenting positive things. I don't know why about this thing over my shoulder.